Today, we are diving into a fascinating conversation about design, preservation, and, hear me out, sustainable farming. Named one of New York Space's top 50 New York designers, Marina Case has been featured in the New York Times, Hudson Valley Magazine, Design New Jersey, and more. She was brought on as part of the team that helped shape the vision for Churchtown Dairy, which is a breathtaking Hudson Valley farm founded by Abby Rockefeller. More than just a dairy, this project is a beacon for sustainability, regenerative agriculture, blending stunning craftsmanship, historic preservation, and a commitment to small-scale farming. In today's episode, Marina shares how the design honors tradition while embracing the future, from its extraordinary buildings and gardens to its role in shaping healthier food systems. Let's get started. Welcome to Grandma's Silver, where tradition meets today. I'm Allie, your host and the founder of the Grand Millennial Lifestyle. Here, we blend aesthetics with nostalgia, engaging in conversations with lifestyle brands, designers, and more to rediscover the timeless charm of the past. Join me as we journey from home to heart, illuminating the past and polishing the present with the gleam of Grandma's Silver. All right, Marina, I'm so excited to chat with you. We have some mutual friends over at the Williamsburg brand, which is the licensing arm of the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation, which we can talk a little bit more about why that matters and why that's part of this conversation today. But I was so excited when they introduced us because the more that I've looked into you and your work and a particular project that we'll talk about a bit today, so fascinating, you're so talented. And I want to just be sure to toss this over to you and give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, tell folks who you are, what it is that you do, and go from there.
Thank you. So my name is Marina Case, and I am located in the Hudson Valley in Hudson, New York, and also I work on Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts and sort of all along the East Coast. And we are an interior design firm that loves to mix styles and use lots of color. And I would say our big focus is historic design, that we do a lot of projects that are historic homes, especially here in the New England area.
Let's go back a moment. How did you get into all of this?
Well, as a kid, I was constantly rearranging my room, the furniture. Like I would push around even huge dressers just to make sure they were in the right place. And that should have been a clue then. I had no idea at the time that it would ultimately lead to my career. I've always just been interested in creating environments for people that make them happy and give them joy. And so I've focused and devoted my life to doing that for others. And I've get, great satisfaction out of that. I absolutely love it. And I initially I had done my master's degree in an unrelated field, which was more organizational communication. And then I had worked in human resources. And then I had a friend ask me to make window treatments. I happened to know how to sew. My mother had taught me how to sew when I was younger. So I made window treatments for two different people. And then a friend of mine said, I want you to do my whole house. So that was really my first project. And I'm very grateful to her to this day because she really launched my interior design career. We had shared a similar love of the English style, English country house decorating, I would say especially. And I was very familiar with that because I really love the idea that I think the English are so good at, and I just wrote a blog post on this actually, that they take items from all over from their travels, which is really the idea of the Grand Tour in England, and then they bring those items to tell their story in their homes. And while at the time that seemed like, it's sort of a historical idea, but it really transfers well, I think, for all of us in modern day living, that when we're traveling, we can bring things home that tell our story, or introduce things into our home that simply tell our story, that make us feel good, that bring us joy, that light us up. And I think it's really important to put time into creating your spaces because you spend a lot of time there and it makes you feel good. It's like taking care of your body and, everything else. So I think that's how I got into it. I sort of, evolved into it slowly. And then I built a great, a great, I'm very lucky. I have a great team, and that's how it happened. That's how it started.
I love that. And it's funny that you mentioned the rearranging of furniture because that was something that I used to do quite a bit when I was younger. And much to my husband's dismay, continue to do today. So
Right. Use the
things are
blankets to
always,
drag the furniture and things like that. Right.
yeah, things are always moving around here. One question I had, because of course I'm always so interested in folks's design philosophies, the things that kind of create your personal influence. Are you from the New York area, from the New England, Mid-Atlantic? I know you're there now,
I
but is that your roots?
I am. I was born in New York City. My parents were immigrants. They came here in the 1950s. My mother came from Germany and my father from Greece. So we would often travel back to those places during the summers to visit my grandparents. And that exposure, I think, really contributed to my career because it allowed me to see things that I don't think I would have seen here as easily. For example, I did a great project for Glenmere Mansion, which is a hotel in Chester, New York, and I worked on a spa there. And a lot of my travels in Greece and Turkey and Morocco and so forth in those places really led to the design there for the spa that I did there, which wound up being Departures named it one of the top 100 spas places to visit in the world. So I was excited
Wow.
about that. So yeah, I think that my travels and my exposure having parents that were not born here really kind of helped a lot in a way.
Yeah. Speaking of projects, I don't know if we'll call it one of your more recent, but one that has certainly come across my radar is the Churchtown Dairy project. And I am not even sure the best place to start. I don't know if it's better to start with its history or with your involvement and just how this all, what it is, why it matters historically, because I think that is so fascinating. And then also how you got to be part of this super exciting project.
Yeah, so I actually met the builder and designer of the project here in Hudson. I happened to be out grabbing a bite to eat and I ran into him and we started talking. And within 15 minutes, we sort of like realized he's like, you work with Colonial Williamsburg. And he had spent his career taking down old buildings and barns in New England, from Maine, from New Hampshire, and from Vermont, and putting them back up. He would go to New England, take them down, put them back up on Martha's Vineyard. That was what he became known for. That was his specialty. And so he was hired to build and design the entire Churchtown Dairy, which includes a round barn, a series of New England buildings that is the store and the milking parlor and the cheese making area, and then also a guest house, which is how I wound up working on that. So when we met, we sort of connected. He knew he could build the building, but he didn't quite know how to finish it. And so he said, would you like to get involved? So I did. Eventually, we actually fell in love and we are partners now. So
Oh,
it's
that's
kind of
such a fun
yeah,
story.
it's really a sweet story. So,
Oh,
and it's really a great project in that it just goes beyond even that. It was founded by Abby Rockefeller, who is a tremendous activist in trying to bring back real food and raw milk and farming and organic practices to our lives. And she will host events there, and that was what the house is for, in part, is to host the speakers that we have at, say, the Real Organic Conference or other events where we are really focusing. And it was really near and dear to my heart because my mother, as a German, we had a huge garden growing up. My friends didn't really have those gardens, so I was like, why do I have a garden and my friends don't? They were, eating more of the foods from the supermarkets that they could buy off the shelf, which at the time, right, 70s, 80s, that's what you did. And I didn't realize I was eating food from the garden and that would be a good thing. And so when I met Abby, I was so excited that she wanted to do this, to bring back the idea of eating real food again. I mean, we really have become accustomed to eating much more processed food, which isn't great for us. And
yep.
there's a lot of reasons why. And the studies are all showing that now. So this project just aligned with me in so many ways, with my own values, with my now partner's values. And I was just really excited to be a part of it.
so many questions, but I do want to
Okay.
back up for I want to back up for a second here just to provide a bit of context because you said a couple of key words that I just want to make sure we're connecting the dots for those who are listening. So you mentioned your partner's excitement about the fact that you had familiarity with Colonial Williamsburg. Can we explain why that would be insightful and as it pertains to this project?
Right. So a lot of my projects have been historically based. I spent a lot of my younger years and even to this day visiting historic sites. So as a designer, I felt like, and I was a self-taught designer, I needed to find out why certain things were done certain ways. So I would travel to places like Winterthur or Deerfield or a lot of historic sites, including Colonial Williamsburg when I was younger, or Philadelphia, Charlottesville in Virginia, all these different places, Thomas Jefferson's home. All of these different visits really attuned my skills, and ultimately I became very interested in design. So he kind of picked up on that. I had reached out to Williamsburg, and Kiri, who's in charge of the brand, will tell you the story. I kind of cold called them and said, you know, you really should be working with designers in terms of the brand because if we sell your products, that will get the products out there and really support the foundation at the same time, and then reinforce our history in America here. And so it was like a win-win-win, and they really like that idea. And so now we've been collaborating for many years to do that. So when I did this project, and then it ties back on a whole nother level because Abby Rockefeller's grandmother helped found Colonial Williamsburg. So there were so many incredible connections, and it was serendipitous that it all came together. Does
Amazing.
that explain it
It
better?
does, yes, because I know that and I think in prior episodes, I collaborated with the Williamsburg team, and that has come up in passing, and but I just wanted to make sure that we addressed it here so that folks understood that connection. The other part of this that I'd love to hear a little bit more about, both because of my own ignorance and curiosity, as well as I'm sure some of our listeners, is did the Rockefellers already own this property?
So
And so
Abby's
she was,
mother was also very passionate about farming and land, and
okay.
she did purchase tracts of land at the time to hold it for the farmers, actually, so that it would continue as farming. I think she was from New England originally, so that was something she was very passionate about. So Abby inherited that plot of land, which was approximately 250 acres. At the time, her siblings did not want it. She said, "I will take it." Her father had founded Blue Hill Stone Barns in Westchester, and I believe this is how the story goes. She was talking to that group, and they said, you know, you really should start a dairy. And she loved that idea. So that's how it all got started. And we did do a whole video with Homeworthy recently that sort of tells her story. She did a great job doing a video with them and explaining the story. So it's kind of a fun one to watch. She founded this dairy with the idea that she could use it as a platform for her activism, and I have so much respect for her because for her to take her resources and really put it into this is really, I think, a testament to her values and her doing good for a lot of people too. And I've learned a lot. I can't imagine people that come to the dairy how much they learn going there. We get many, many visitors every week there. There are programs there regularly. And now the guest house, which houses the speakers for the events, but we also are going to offer it now for stays, farm stays, 2 weeks a month. We'll do that so that people will have an opportunity to stay there and really experience the farm.
I have to imagine the process might have followed some of what you were familiar with, but also this is such a unique project that it might have differed a bit, and the collaboration might have looked a little bit different, the inspiration. So what was that process like? How did it shape your end result? I'd love to hear more about that.
That's a very interesting question. We do a lot of concept work in the beginning of our projects, which means we're usually gathering images that resonate with the owner, right? But this was a little trickier because I needed to understand Abby. I needed to understand Rick and where he wanted to go. And the two of them weren't always on the same page. So I went at it slowly. I would visit places that she liked, and she would show me pictures of things she liked, and she would show me rooms that she liked. So that helped a lot. And then I wound up really starting with either a key piece of fabric or textile in the room as a focal point, and then launching from there, or a color. For example, the red bedroom, we call it, which has a beautiful red bed in it. It's really old bedposts that Rick took. He merged them together to, it probably was a full bed at one time. You know how all the old beds are usually full
Mhm.
sizes or even smaller. And then he created a queen size out of it by attaching, all the right pieces. And then he painted it red, and that really springboarded the room. And then we introduced beautiful textiles from Count and Tout, and then beautiful artwork from World Art Group, which is a Colonial Williamsburg brand. The other thing that I sometimes use, and I did in this bedroom, was as well as an antique quilt. I would take the antique quilt as a springboard. So that particular quilt had red and yellow in it, and you can see the images on my Instagram. All of it just wound up tying in together. We had red, yellow, blue, blues, greens. I found chairs that had all the right colors. We had a carpet that had the right colors. So in the end, that's how the room sort of went, that there was a key item of inspiration, and then it would launch from there. In the other side of the house, there are two bedrooms on the main floor. So that's the red bedroom. And then there's a garden bedroom on the right side of the house that is very close to the medicinal gardens, which is part of the farm. That really is Abby's favorite room. We have Roman shades in there with a fern fabric on it that's from John Rosselli, and Schumacher's prints on the chairs, another garden pattern, again, an antique quilt, and lots of greens and whites and ferny, gardeny type fabric. So it's really a fun room. So they all have a theme per se, I think, each room. And that is fun for guests that come visit. They walk around, and, it's one of those places that takes you a while to discover everything that's happening. It's really a special house. It's really great.
As someone who works with a lot of historic and historically inspired properties, what were you pulling or what was your focus here? Maybe the question is, what historic influence influenced your design?
I was really probably focused on making it an English and European farmhouse. So was Rick, actually. I think he felt that it should feel like a French country farmhouse. And I was like, no, it's really an English country farmhouse. And we would have these debates on really what it was. In the end, it all, sort of works together. In the library, I did crewel on the windows, which reminded me of an English country house. I put Sanderson's willow pattern in the back hall, which is really, a 19th century English pattern that really brought the whole back hall alive and connected it to the kitchen. The kitchen floor is really incredible. It's an old roof that Rick found, and then they cut all the tiles to form borders. It's well worth visiting and looking at. I think it's one of the most special things about the house is the kitchen floor, because it's really the heart of the home, and it's this old tile roof that got laid out in this beautiful pattern with borders and octagon pieces in between, and it was a lot of work, but it came out incredibly well. And so there were all these historic inspiration jumping points. Each room has, the living room and dining room have a fireplace. Two of the bedrooms have fireplaces. So it's really those become focal points often in a room. So in the sitting room upstairs, I call it the blue room. There's a sitting area with a fireplace. So you have two French chairs in front of the fireplace across from a couch, and then a beautiful bed that looks right at the fireplace as well. So that those types of things sort of brought it together. That particular room, again, was inspired by an antique quilt, a blue-green style, blue-green quilt. So all vintage quilts we used to
I
kind of
love that.
springboard the room. Yeah.
Now, because of course it's this operational farm and it has its own mission, and it's really serving a pretty important purpose. How much of that, like, did you have to, again, because this is probably a smidge different than maybe some other projects, were the conversations a little different in that this had a real organic sustainability? I mean, was that something that you had to take into consideration at all?
Yeah, I think I try to incorporate organic patterns as much as possible. Abby loves gardens, and I think it worked. It served the farmhouse well because, I just brought as much of the outside in as I could. In the king bedroom, for example, there's only one room with a king bed in it. And that room has also cruel type shades, which is this beautiful, intricate red, golden, green pattern on the Roman shades. And they really evoke sort of bringing the garden in. They really help bring the garden in. And then Rick had sourced these great tiles from Portugal in green and gold. So the tiles that surround the fireplace tie into the beautiful curtains. And then we actually wound up using a Bunny Williams quilt on that bed, and that gave it more, it continued the organic theme. And I think there's a lot of organic happening in the house. It makes you feel like you're outside, even though you're inside and you're warm and cozy. So, and going back to the medicinal garden room, which is the garden room, the medicinal gardens there are extraordinary. They're worth visiting and looking through. And the herbs are harvested and used by herbalists and even doctors that are very homeopathic. They use the ashwagandha or the chamomile. There's all kinds of herbs that are grown to create tinctures and things that are healing. So I love that aspect too. I am an herbalist myself. I try to use no prescription medications at all if I can. And so that really spoke to me that we had this sort of theme going on that was so important to the house. We really tried to bring everything into the house we could. Some of the artwork has, obviously farm scenes, cow scenes, European horse scenes, that sort of thing. So,
Well, you just mentioned something that was actually, I was curious about because, and I too am very holistic, very homeopathic. I also think like you, it might be part of my upbringing. That was just something that was really valued, and I'm so grateful for it. I'm curious because of course you're part of this broader project, what things that you've taken away on the sustainability or the farm side, like are there elements of the broader project that have now influenced your life or that you feel are just have been such valuable lessons?
well, it's so funny that you say that because I, as a child, grew up with this. As I mentioned, my mother was gardening, very pure foods, pure ways of cooking. And then as I got older, I'm like, oh, all this is available in a box in the supermarket. I can buy a can of soup and all of
Yeah.
that, right? There's all these convenient foods. I can go to fast food places that became so popular during the 70s and 80s when we were growing up. And I just can't. And now that I'm back in this environment, the project really helped remind me that I actually grew up in a very healthy way. And I have returned to almost eating all organic if I can. I almost buy nothing out of a box. If I do, it's, organic pasta or something like that. I buy organic potatoes. There's nothing that I don't buy that's not organic if I can do it. And I buy the beef at the dairy pretty regularly. I actually love the grass-fed beef that they sell there in the store, and the raw milk and their cheeses are outstanding, and they're sold all over this Hudson Valley area that we're in here in Hudson, and also in the Berkshires in Western Massachusetts. I see the cheeses all over the place. I also see them in the local restaurants here. So it really has like come home full circle for me, and I am just so honored and delighted to be part of this project.
You were the perfect fit.
Thank you.
I
Yeah, it was
love
sort
that.
of, we always say, Rick and I say it was it was serendipity for sure
Oh my goodness.
that we met.
Not that I want you to speak for Abby, but from your own experience in interacting, with this larger team, understanding their mission, being a part now of the mission, do you have a sense of what everyone hopes some of those takeaways are for those who are visiting or learning about the project?
Well, I think when you visit, Abby had a focus for Rick, and and she used to say this, and it's such a simple statement, but she would say to him, it has to be beautiful. It has to be beautiful. And Wendell Berry, who's a famous author on farms and organic foods and processes, has said that in his book. And he's written several books, actually. So her idea that it had to be beautiful, I didn't really understand it in the beginning. But then as I see all the people come, and the farm is truly extraordinary when you drive up. It's one of those like jaw-dropping, like, oh my gosh, look at that round barn. It's really one of the prettiest, if not one of the most beautiful barns I've ever seen. Certainly here in the Northeast, I'm sure it's one of the best actually in the country. doing a little bit of a humble brag for him, but it really is extraordinary. And the reason she would say that is to bring the people so that the people would come because they would want to visit this beautiful place. At least this is what I'm thinking now. At this point, that was her goal. And it
Mhm.
worked. Like people come and they're just like, wow. And then at the same time, they're slowly taking in the fact that there are these medicinal gardens and they're laid out in this beautiful pattern, like an English garden would be. Or when they see the cows, it brings them back to a place that we've kind of lost over the years here in the United States. You know, this primitive, simple way of life that now I'm seeing a lot of people get into homesteading and return to. Like we're seeing this movement now of going back to this purity of living. And so I see the reactions of people. They're just mind blown. It's just so interesting when people visit what they discover and this it's set up so that it's, it attracts you and then it draws you in, which is kind of fun.
You mentioned, of course, your own interactions and work in collaboration with the Williamsburg brand. In your own, not even, I mean, we could certainly talk about how it pertains to this particular project, but in general, your own design philosophy, in what ways do you love to honor the past?
Well, I think it's important because if we know our history, we can move forward with confidence. I often worry that designers don't I they don't understand, the younger designers are not understanding how important it is to understand why and how buildings were put together historically. There is so much to learn from visiting various countries and their historic homes and to see what they're doing and how they created places to live that tell the story of their own people. I really believe, and I this is why I've always been so passionate about Colonial Williamsburg, because they are really helping to tell the American story and, have done a good job telling it from every aspect, not just the colonial period, but, even before that, what was happening on the land and so forth. So I think um, it's just really important to understand our history to be able to tell our story effectively today, our stories in our own homes. And telling our story in our own homes is, I think people don't think about that enough. I wish people would think a little bit more like, I want to tell my story. I want to be able, and which is why I also love to mix styles, because when you mix styles, there's a way for you to relate to somebody in your own home that you might not have if you didn't do that. So I think mixing styles is it's an eclecticism that a way to talk to people. So I think that's really important.
I love that. And it probably also stems back to your own upbringing, that idea of the blend of culture and tradition and aesthetic and just all of those things. So I
Right.
think,
We actually say in our welcome packet to our clients, we mix traditional, modern, global or organic folk art, that kind of thing, and fun. Those are the four styles that we like to mix. And we say to them, we want you to put the percentages on it. And I actually had a client I met with a new client this morning, and she wrote specifically the percentages she wanted, and she had to wrestle with her husband on that because the husband maybe wanted a little more modern and she wanted a little more fun. But those are healthy discussions that need to occur. And when they occur, I find that the result is really incredible, that formula really works across the board nicely. So
you mentioned the word learn a little while ago. And I do know that I saw on your website you have some educational resources and courses and that sort of thing. Is that something that you would like to speak to?
sure. Yeah. Yeah. I created a course for designers who are more getting started, right? So it has all of the things they wouldn't learn in school, like all the business skills they would need, how to set up their processes, how to set up their systems. So that's what the course is for. And it really just sort of help. It's a course I would have loved to have when I first started. It helps fill in all the blanks. That's what the course does. So thank you for asking. I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Absolutely. And I've heard in the past that that is a lacking resource out there, especially for young new designers who have this training but have no idea necessarily what their next steps are, or how to use it. And so I think that when I saw that, I just thought that was addition that you have going on over there on your website.
Thank you. I've learned too that I actually got together. I like to, I'm friends with a lot of other designers. We got together for lunch recently here, right in Hudson. And there's a lot of designers that were formerly dentists or formerly lawyers or formerly, they change careers midlife and they become designers. A good friend of mine, Krisha, she was a doctor. So, I think this is a great course to help fill in the blanks for the people that are just sort of jumping in. It's a good investment for them, I think. And if they need coaching, I love to do that too.
Wonderful.
There's a link for that. There's a link for that on the website also.
Perfect. Well, understanding at the very beginning of this conversation and, somewhere in the middle, we were talking about the Williamsburg connection, our mutual friends over there. I want to make sure we're talking a bit about some of these products that you did feature in this particular project. So did you want to go ahead and just outline some of those? And we can also make sure that later we'll link to all of them so people can see exactly what we're talking about.
Yes, I would love to talk about that. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of the artwork is from the World Art Group. There's botanical prints in the house botanical prints are always a great way to decorate in a farmhouse. I do like to use a mix of different style of art. I used a lot of vintage art too, but our World Art Group was a great source for that. Some of the containers in the house for plants and things were from Port 68, which is a source I use often in my own work. They have beautiful ceramic and porcelain lamps and compotes and ways to display plants and flowers. So I love that company too, Port 68. We use Schumacher fabrics on the pillows and on some of the furniture and throughout the house. So Schumacher is a company that the Red Shutters has used since it started actually in the 1950s. So we love Schumacher very much. Great company. The furniture in the living room is actually from Charleston Forge, which Williamsburg has a collaboration with. And it actually is a very interesting company because they combine metal and wood pieces. So we have a coffee table and a side table from Charleston Forge, which we love. Mataheta Porcelain, which is a great porcelain company. And we have some of their pieces in the dining room and also in the kitchen. So that's a nice collaboration also.
We love Mataheta. We had a lovely conversation with Wendy.
Wendy Kavalheim. Yeah.
What a sweetheart.
She just came out with her book. Yeah.
Yeah. She's wonderful. And what a brand.
She's great.
I will make sure that we're linking to all of these things so people who are curious can just click, find what we're talking about. I will make sure to link to your website, which is where folks can find not only your contact information if they're interested in working with you, but you do have some of the images from this project on your portfolio on the site. Plus, I know you mentioned the Homeworthy interview. If I'm not mistaken, it's also coming out in a few other places. So people will
the Cottage Journal magazine. Yeah.
Very exciting. They'll also find your coursework on there. So we'll make, and coaching. So lots of resources for those listening. We'll direct them to the website. Social media links, we'll put those on there. Is there anything I'm missing?
No, I think you did a great job. I really love your podcast and, the homage you pay to history. So thank you for doing that. That's really great.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today.
Great. Thank you, Allie. So grateful.